And we're all set.
Got it. Hey, everybody, welcome. And thanks for joining us on today's Lunch and Learn. You all have had the opportunity to hear from the team that manages individual giving at SBP. And now we will take a dive into corporate and foundation giving, or as it's sometimes called, institutional giving. I'm Elizabeth Egley, Senior Director of Institutional Giving, and joining me today are SBP's Chief Development Officer, Alexis Williams, and SBP's Strategic Partnerships Associate, Brenna Pittman. Also on our team is Brittany Evans. She has a conflict today. She's our National Grant Manager. So let's take a look at the agenda. Today we will review SBP's various revenue streams. We'll unpack the difference in grants and donations, share some basics on foundation and corporate giving, and then wrap things up. We'll play a game. So excited about this game, y'all. Of course, we look forward to hearing your questions and comments. So please either write them in the chat or save them until the end, and we'll definitely carve out room for that. But before we get into this agenda, Brenna is going to share a corporate partner highlight with you.
Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. I apologize that my camera's off. My Wi-Fi is being a little bit finicky today, so it has decided not to support my video. But as Elizabeth mentioned, I'm going to briefly highlight one of our longest standing partnerships, which is with Farmers Insurance. So I can't really start talking about the relationship between farmers and SBP until I talk about farmers specifically. So it's kind of always been one of their core beliefs from a philanthropic lens, from a business lens, that their value add lies in building strong communities. And so that's ultimately what led to our paths intersecting in 2011 after the Joplin tornadoes. It was actually their CEO, Jeff Daly, who initially pushed SBP to begin responding to disasters outside of Louisiana and outside of hurricanes. And so that was really the beginning of our journey to becoming a national leader in disaster resilience and recovery. And that last part of that phrase, disaster resilience and recovery, is really, really crucial. It's why they support us. They want to build strong communities by supporting disaster recovery and making communities more resilient in the face of the next disaster. And so Farmers has become, over the last 12 years, a really exemplary partner, not just financially, where they've contributed over $10 million in 12 years, but in terms of volunteers as well. So they have contributed over 49,000 volunteer hours to support over 130 families. And this support has been enduring. As you can see on the screen, they recently supported us on the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey, which was in August of 2022. The photo on the top is at Miss Swearington's home, where they were there all day to help rebuild. They did flooring, I think they did some drywalls, and they were just so incredibly kind, and it was a great day. And then on the bottom, you can see them at Miss Claudette's welcome home party. And so in terms of volunteer, they've really just become an all-encompassing support. They've provided that hands-on rebuilding work, but they've also provided advisory services by representing SBP on our board of directors and by offering its government affairs team to support our policy initiatives. And in addition, on the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey, they announced a new 3-year commitment of $4.5 million to SBP. So all of that is to say that Farmers has become a really integral partner and has become really, really important to our growth. And we're so excited to continue growing this relationship and watching it expand. And so now I'll pass it off to Alexis to talk about revenue sources.
Thanks, Brenna. Hey, everybody. So I think when we first talk about how does an organization like SBP attain its revenue, it's a really important thing to understand of the diversity needed in our portfolio in order to create a sustainable kind of existence for ourselves. And so when we look at this pie chart, you'll see a variety of components of where the cash is coming from, along with a briefly bulleted mix of things that kind of dictate why diversity in our portfolio is so important. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of those and then we'll move on. One thing to consider is market volatility. You all have seen a lot of reports with a lot of layoffs happening throughout the country. And so when we think about things that will dictate how we're going to get our sources of revenue, especially when it comes from corporate actors as well as foundations at times, it's really important to understand the role of market volatility in that, and that as folks kind of pare down their budgets, whether that's for staffing or other resources for their own businesses, likely that coincides with their ability to give philanthropically and engage in other kind of strategic partnerships. The second component is what type of money are we getting, and how does that affect our ability to run the organization? And with that, we look at restricted versus unrestricted. Restricted funding basically means that money is going to be used for a specific project. It may have a specific time frame where the funds need to be spent. All of those things are ways in which investments by institutional donors can be restricted and really dictate how we spend our cash. What we love and are incorporating into our strategy to grow in this year and in the years to follow is an expansion of unrestricted funding, because that gives us the maximum flexibility in order to be able to do the work that we know needs to be done and in the ways in which we know it needs to be done. And so when we think about how that plays out as far as the concept of trust-based philanthropy, we're always trying to urge our partners to give us more expansive and longer-term unrestricted gifts. Lastly, I think it's really important to diagnose and understand the power of donor perception in this whole mixture of kind of components of how we get the cash, get the money, and really understanding that donors are looking at also who is giving us money. People have more access to information than ever before. And so as they look at our organizational health, that enables them to have more confidence in parking resources with organizations like SBP. A great example of this from our own portfolio is to look at the Opportunity Housing Program, which not only generates our own income, but then it also has the ability to access different sources of funding like tax credits and federal grants. So not only are we enabling our own kind of revenue and sustainability practice internally, but then we're also utilizing external sources to kind of back up that revenue generation and practice. And that's something that organizational donors as well as individual donors love to see, that an organization like SBP is also kind of taking command of its own journey. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a grant versus donations. Really, I think when we talk about grants versus donation, it's about the structure and what's required with follow-up action. Grants are really kind of more on the restricted end of funding type. There's a set kind of time frame to achieve that. And also you have broader expectations of what the check-ins would be like. So we have impact reports that we send. They may want different data points referred to in those impact reports. There may also be different kind of comms expectations from our organization that we would, lift certain things up in social media, for example. With donations, a lot of the time you see less of the restrictions on how we spend the cash. Again, bringing up that idea of trust-based philanthropy and how that shows through a broader unrestricted donation. Typically, you're going to have less reporting requirements. I've had some funders who want monthly report outs and one that just wants to say, how'd you do this year? Let us know some key stories and call it a day. So really understanding, I think the main key point here is donations tend to have more flexibility in their structure and allow for an organization to really flourish and do the work and report out kind of as needed. And grants are more of a rigid structure. And then next we have in the kind of broader scope of foundation giving, we have a couple of different types of foundations. And so I want to quickly run through those. One of which is a private foundation. And so there are many, many private foundations in this country and outside of the US. Those are really looking at individuals or families that are going they have a cause that they're very excited about and want to see change happen in that specific lane. They usually are ones that make grants. So if we think about grants versus donation, there's a structure within that component. And then also usually from a governance standpoint, meaning how do they run the foundation? It's usually privately controlled. Sometimes it's run by the family who is putting the money into the foundation. Other times there could be a small board that operationalizes the funding choices and decisions. And then really it's about long-standing legacy. What is the family or the private entity doing to ensure that there's kind of a storyline in their kind of philanthropic journey and legacy. There are a lot of tax incentives, which is why people do foundations. Usually you won't see a private foundation built under a budget for less than $1 million to $5 million. It's usually not as advantageous for people to engage in all of the legwork and money that it takes to lift up a private foundation until you reach that threshold. So just as a fun fact, that's usually when you see these pop up, that's usually the amount of money that's behind these foundations at minimum. Next, we'll run through the community foundations. So community foundations are a great resource for SBP and something that I know our share team is currently working on trying to connect with. And they're a great resource because they not only bridge the gap between individuals and other organizations in a community, but they're a way in which funding resources can really go and be exercised with a more specific output because they're funneling in resources from a variety of sources. A lot of these are community specific. And so when we look at, for example, disasters that are happening in Florida, there will be a variety of community foundations in operation there with a real heart and specific intention of supporting that community, with the understanding that there are the broader kind of mega national foundations that are looking at a more national approach. They're really focused on helping folks within their own communities. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about what do foundations support. I think no two foundations are completely alike. I think there's a lot of politics within foundations, and a lot of that goes to connecting with what is the core mission of each foundation. And depending on who's leading the foundation, those missions could change. But by and large, they're really pinpointing 1 to maybe 5 key issue areas. And when I say issue areas, that really means what are the things that these foundations care about and how are they wanting to see impact in those specific lanes. So you'll see that develop from anything from education to racial equity to social determinants of health and everything in between that. And so when we think about how are we approaching folks, I think SBP is specifically in a place of advantage because we do so many things that intersect with so many issue areas. As we continue to kind of crystallize and pare down the messaging, we're better able to target various foundations based on their need and show how SBP shows up in a myriad of ways across that spectrum of issue areas. Before I go any further and we connect with Elizabeth for some of the next slides, does anybody have any questions? I know I just covered a lot there. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Just kidding, always open. Okay. Great, okay. Elizabeth, take it away.
Great, thank you, Alexis, and thank you, Brenna. I'm going to spend a little time talking about corporate giving. We'll talk about the motivations of why companies donate. After all, companies do exist to make profits. And so it's interesting to understand why they're willing to give some of those profits away. How many, or maybe rhetorical question, have heard the term ESG lately? This is something that now that you've heard it, you're going to see it like if you ever read a newspaper, because it's everywhere. ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. And it's a framework for how corporate companies basically operate. It's like the big ones, companies, especially ones that have like stakeholders, shareholders, use ESG to demonstrate how the company manages operations under each of these categories. It puts a stake in the ground for how the company is addressing its environmental impact or its corporate ethics or its social change. The idea behind ESG is that shareholders want to see that the company they're investing in is doing business in a sustainable way, in an environmentally conscious way. And these companies are then scored on how they perform within their framework. Now, we don't have a ton of time to take a deep dive into the effectiveness or criticisms of ESG, but as I mentioned, this is a well-covered, documented thing, and it's actually really interesting to see kind of like the pros and cons, greenwashing, benefits, all of those things. So please look it up. Nonetheless, a company's ESG report is a great place to start when we are prospecting potential donors, because it gives a glimpse into how the company sees the world. It's like a wide lens on if, you know, SBP's programs may or may not fit into the way that they operate. As we dig deeper into the company's profile, we take a look at the S of ESG, which is the social impact. And this really helps us narrow in on how the company is investing in community relations. And within that S, there is CSR, which is corporate social responsibility. And this is the department or the professionals who are building the company's strategy for social impact. And they're the ones activating the grants programs. So we talked about shareholders paying attention to a company's ESG strategies. Part of that is how companies are supporting the people and the communities who keep them in business. Remember, companies exist to make a profit and deliver value to shareholders, customers, and employees. And a shareholder is just anyone who invests in that company or owns stock in that company. If giving away money helps the company make money, then everybody wins here. The image on the right from Southwest is like a quintessential example of how companies see this as a, you know, revolving door. If there's happy employees, then the customers are happy. If the customers are happy, the shareholders are happy. Finally, consumers play a big role in pushing companies to invest in social impact, and they make buying decisions based on companies that align with their own values. We can all do a collective round of applause for the millennial generation, which represents $2.3 trillion in purchasing power. And 70% of them say they will direct their purchases to companies who are socially responsible. This generation is driving demand for social good. And you can see how companies are responding to this. If you look at Cliff Bar, Patagonia, or even like your local coffee shop, you're more inclined to attend or support a place that is looking to do good in its community. So why do companies give away money? Employee retention and recruitment is a really big one. We are at record low unemployment levels right now, which means companies are motivated to keep good talent on their teams. One way they do this is to show team members that they care about the communities they live and work in. Being able to offer volunteer opportunities or donation matching to employees is an essential part of employee engagement and retention. For those of you who engage with corporate volunteers, having a conversation with them about their company's donation match is a great way to encourage them to support SBP. And companies also match volunteer hours. So I included this chart here, sorry if it's a little small, basically showing that company volunteer from a company, if they volunteer a specific number of hours and fill out the form, then the company will then make a donation to the nonprofit they volunteer for. And this says, 40% of Fortune 500 companies participate in this type of activity. So we certainly encourage you all that, have those conversations with volunteers, encourage them to take that final step of filling out the paperwork. And by doing so, we talk about a culture of philanthropy. You all are helping the development team get more programmatic revenue so that we can help more families. Next is tax benefits. Companies generally can deduct qualified contributions of up to 10% of its taxable income. This number actually increased to 25% during the COVID-19 years, encouraging companies to continue to invest and support in their communities. This is similar to individual giving. Individuals can also deduct more, like up to 50 or 60% of qualified contributions, and individual giving during 2020, 2021 actually went up to 100% deduction. It's typically for companies, they're not going to make a grant or donation without going for the tax deduction. Individuals can take it or leave it sometimes. It's not seen as the main motivation for individual giving, but we just talked about how foundations can be a tax shelter. That is sort of the workaround there. Then I have a big asterisk next to this one. I was a little cringy to add this to the list because in all of my dealings with corporate folks, publicity is never their motivation for supporting SBP. However, once a decision is made to support our programs, it is important that the company is talking about how they are supporting communities. And if they don't publicize it, then the shareholders, the customers, and the employees can't see it per our slides a few slides ago. And so at SBP, we talk about our value proposition to companies as the ability to tell stories long after the disaster happens. We see all the terrible things that disasters cause, but with SBP, employees can come, volunteer, lay hands on a house, meet a client, attend a welcome home party, and generally see that investing in disaster recovery can lead to happier times. And so publicity is kind of like the necessary evil of corporate giving, but again, it's never really what I've seen as the motivation to do so. And finally, it's the right thing to do. Companies are made up of people. And at SBP, we believe that people are hardwired to fix problems. And I have the good fortune of working very closely with the social impact folks at companies. And I'm here to tell you that these folks are driven by the same things that we are. They love meeting our clients and doing what they can to get us the resources we need to make a difference. Your ability to deliver programmatic results gives us the ability to go back to funders to ask for more support. This is, again, where our culture of philanthropy comes in. Alexis likes to say that we need to put as much emphasis in funding our programs as we do in executing them. And you all play a role in our ability to fundraise for the programs you're executing. And it's a cycle. And it's important that you understand that by you achieving your goals and giving our clients great service, you are making it possible for more families to benefit from SBP's services. So before we get into our game, I'm so excited for this game, y'all. Get your typing fingers ready. Brenna, can you give us another partner highlight?
Yeah, definitely. So we are going to use everything that we've just learned about corporate partners and kind of do a little case study using Toyota. So I think at this point, it's relatively safe to say that Toyota is kind of part of SBP's DNA. Our relationship with them started over a decade ago when they introduced us to the Toyota production system. And that really lent itself to SBP defining its core characteristics and its culture, such as the idea of constructive discontent and sharing what you know with others, which is Ucoden, but also just what the day-to-day looks like, how efficiency looks for us, and how we combine all of that to bring more families home. And so not only has Toyota really become just a defining part of our story, it's also a really good representation of how they choose to give, but also how other companies decide where to put their resources. And so the first part of that is business alignment. You can see from the quote on the screen from Mike Goss, we support like-minded nonprofits that are problem solvers and believe in collaboration, partnerships, and innovation to drive impact. So Toyota, in addition to other companies, they invest in SBP because we're like-minded. There's a lot of overlap in how we think and how we choose to solve problems and how we choose to focus upstream and always search for innovative ideas and solutions. And so Toyota knows that if they invest in SBP, not only are we going to use their investment to improve ourselves and accelerate our recovery and maximize their impact, we're going to spread that even farther by sharing that with other nonprofits and amplify our impact and Toyota's impact through those partners. And so then a second part of why corporations choose to give to us and other nonprofits in general is geography. Companies tend to support areas where they have a lot of employees and customers. And so for Toyota, their annual giving supports our national work, but they do tend to give additional grants or additional support to our disaster relief efforts in areas where they have a plant or where they have a ton of employees. And so for us, that's typically Texas and Kentucky. And so then we also have to think about employee engagement. You know, there is oftentimes this kind of give and take. And so companies love working with SBP, not only because we provide this best-in-class volunteer experience, but we also know that we're going to support their employees too. So Toyota sees SBP's preparedness resources as important to the company's business continuity. And as a result, SBP has trained hundreds of Toyota's employees through our Prepare intervention. But this is not Toyota. I can't talk about Prepare without also mentioning AT&T. They're another great example of that give and take relationship that often comes with corporate giving. We have trained a lot of their employees on preparedness. They've given us a lot of financial support. They've given us a lot of volunteer work on site, but they also donated their whole design team to help us build our Equip app. And as a result, that saved SBP over $340,000. Because they saw the benefit to our program to expand and become stronger as it impacted the communities there and their employees. And then the last piece just to touch on is in-kind giving. So SBP has benefited from a lot of different types of in-kind gifts, but from Toyota specifically, the donation of 40 vehicles has been really just outstanding. And I mean, it's how we get to site every day. It's just been really, really integral and a huge part of us. And so before we get into the game, does anybody have extra questions or comments? Going once. Okay.
Okay. All right, y'all. It's time for everyone's favorite game show. Name that donor. Yay!
Yeah.
Okay, so Brenna is going to read a clue. And if you know the answer of this donor, you are going to type it in the chat and press enter. Kyle, I'm going to ask that you please monitor for the winners here. And we'll have 4 winners. Each winner will get a Starbucks gift card sent to you. Also
not playing around, folks. This is real cash money prizes.
So big. Also, I'd ask the development team to please not participate in this. Give people a chance, okay?
And it's the first person who gets the correct answer typed into the chat is the winner, correct?
Correct.
All right, cool.
Thank you. Okay. All right, Brenna, let's read the clue to who's behind door number 1.
All right. So this donor helped to launch SBP's Fortified program in 2019. Last year, they sent volunteers to Homa every month for the whole year. And they also gave each client a gift card to Lowe's to help them purchase items for their home. And so Elizabeth, the correct answer is
Travelers.
Hey, Nicole was the first one to type in a correct answer.
Should the finance team really be able to participate too if the development team can't? I'm okay
Well,
with
and
excluding myself if I need to.
Nope. winner.
and maybe just have one, you can only win once. If that's, we're
I
making
like
up.
how we're designing the rules as we go. But Nicole, you win. You can't win again.
Good job. Congrats. Okay. Oh, wait, I have a comment about Travelers. Travelers actually doubled their annual investment to SBP via a $1 million grant this year. They're also featuring SBP by way of a video at their annual shareholders meeting in April. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to the Southeast Louisiana team for being such great hosts to the Travelers volunteers throughout the year. Your engagement was a great example of how our team works together to build a culture of philanthropy. Okay, Brenna, let's read the next clue.
All right, so behind door number 2, this donor is primarily focused on helping high school students live healthy lives. After Winter Storm Uri, the foundation leader, who's also a famous rom-com actor, can I get an all right, raised millions to help his fellow Texans. And then the funder maximized their impact by supporting SBP's SHARE program.
All right, the correct answer is
Hey.
just keep living.
Do we deduct for having a G on the end?
Ooh,
All right,
everybody has the G.
Kristen, you are the winner. Autocorrect.
Correct.
Good work.
Nice job, Kristen. Thanks to Just Keep Living's donations totaling over $2.7 million to date, 378 families were supported across 17 counties by 17 share partners. This is also a great story of how philanthropy plays an essential role in disaster recovery, because we recently learned that the long-term CDBG recovery dollars for Winter Storm Uri won't hit the ground until 2024. So JKL's funding really helped to shrink the time between disaster and recovery. Yay for JKL. All right, let's see who's behind door number 3.
All right, we first met this donor on the 10-year anniversary of Katrina, when they donated preparedness backpacks to help our clients be more resilient. Although best known for supporting immediate needs after disaster, this donor helped to launch SBP's Leader Practitioner course. In 2022, they announced their biggest ever investment into disaster resilience.
All right. The winner is Walmart.
Hey, all right, JR Sanderson, you are the winner. Good work.
Nice work. And yes, Walmart Foundation. Walmart's investments in SBP top $7 million to date. And last spring, Walmart announced a $3 million investment into Gulf Coast resilience, its biggest ever commitment to anything in the pre-disaster space. SBP was one of 4 recipients of the grant, which is helping to fund 2 resilience and recovery fellows in Louisiana and our Leader Practitioner course. And this is a picture of Reese May, along with the other grantees at Walmart's headquarters in Bentonville last spring. Okay, Brenna, last door, who's behind it?
All right, so this first-time donor is considered one of the most prestigious private foundations in the United States. After relentless pursuit by Brittany Evans, this funder made a $200,000 commitment to SBP's Hurricane Fiona response. And then this foundation was founded by a man who founded a hotel that rhymes with Milton.
We thought that one might be a little tough. Hilton Foundation is correct.
Hey, all right, Veronica, you are the winner there. Good work.
Mike Sullivan. This gift is in support of SBP's Fiona response. It's aligned with Hilton's support of disasters in areas that receive less attention. Thanks to Hilton, the Disaster Assistance Program team will make FEMA appeals for more than 100 Fiona survivors this year. And to have the support of such a well-respected foundation definitely helps to grab the attention of other really big private foundations across the country. And just a special shout out to Brittany for driving this relationship forward, and to the team in Puerto Rico for being there this many years after Maria to support Hurricane Fiona survivors. Huge shout out. Congrats to all the winners. Thank you for playing. And now I just wanted to highlight here who these are just our funders from 2022 alone that represented nearly $20 million of investment into SBP. And we'll keep it here and take any questions or hear your comments or thoughts about what you heard today.
Hi, this is Leah. I was surprised not to see the Gates Foundation. And I'm from Seattle, currently in PR, but I was surprised they weren't one of our biggest funders. Is that something where we've looked into and they've said no, or just interested to hear?
Do you know anybody there?
I volunteered, but it's a huge foundation and it's very tight knit. But I know, how much money they give. So I was just interested to.
It's actually, I saw this yesterday. Gates Foundation is like the #1 most resourced private foundation in the world. So you're absolutely spot on, and they've done a tremendous amount of work. Our program areas could potentially fit into their work. It's never bubbled up as something that would be a direct fit. But man, would we love to be able to present to them our programs and see if it fits into their sort of public health priorities. Good question, though.
It's also a very complicated beast. I'll just name that. And I think anytime there are personal, and this is maybe something to note just for one major difference between private foundations and others, is that anytime there is drama in the family, it usually indicates that there is drama for the foundation itself. And so when we take that into account of reliability for funding and quickness of response, it's something that we definitely have to think about.
I'm curious, to those of you who interact with volunteers, what are your thoughts on having conversations with those volunteers about their corporate matching programs? Or is that news to anybody?
It's news to me.
Thanks, Scott. Well, we're so appreciative of you all joining us for this Lunch and Learn today. I hope it provided some more insight to those who keep our programs running. And I hope you're really proud of the work that you're doing that inspires each of these funders to support SBP's work. Oh, Edgardo has a question. Yes, Edgardo.
Hi, team. Can you talk a bit more about how do we choose to approach which foundations? I know some of them might be accidental because we know someone there or someone volunteer and we found them, but also usually there's a huge amount of outreach that you do and a lot of efforts in applying to grants that are not always successful. So I'm curious to see, how would you define like the ratio of success between outreach and getting those grants and foundations?
Such a good question, and one that I'd love for the team to hop into it. Brittany, I know you're on the phone. I'll answer your last question first, Edgardo. One of our SMART goals is actually success rate of grant proposals. And so we're seeking 60 to 70%, depending on the level of giving, of success rate. And what that does is it really helps us to focus on funders who we think will fit best with or have a really good chance of winning those proposals. What it also does is it encourages our team to not just write the proposal, but also to build the relationship with the funders themselves. And I'll share an example. There's a foundation in Houston that one of their broad issue areas is community development. And so Brittany reached out to them and asked them to take a tour of our multifamily opportunity housing building that we're building in Houston. They came to site, they laid eyes on it, they asked a bunch of questions. We were able to build a relationship with them. And then they invited us to write a proposal later in the year. That is how we achieve that % success rate, more so than going through the directory of foundations, seeing that there's a grant opportunity, spending time writing it, and crossing our fingers. Does anybody else want to comment about how we do that search?
I guess I can hop in a little bit. I mean, in terms of sourcing, I would say LinkedIn is one of our best friends when we're looking for who the specific contacts are that we're going to reach out to. But to find the foundations and the corporations, it's a lot of digging and looking at their giving priorities, who they've given to the past. If they have a foundation, looking at their 990, because sometimes it will list out who they've given to and how much, so we can also start to break it out by the threshold that they can donate to. So if it's going to be 25K or 100 or 250, and from there we can kind of divvy up who on the team is going to own it too. Geography is sometimes how we prospect as well. If a company doesn't have a specific geographic focus, they might be a little bit less likely to give. Also, interest in volunteer work, that can often be a really big hook to a company, kind of similar with that give and take balance that we talked about in the presentation. That can sometimes be a good step in the doorway, or foot in the door, whatever the phrase is. And preparedness initiatives too. What we can give to them sometimes will later attract a donation, because they've seen kind of the tangible result of what we're doing outside of the rebuilding work. Because as much as we care about disasters and as much as we know that's important, it just doesn't fit into their budget for the year. So we kind of need to make them aware of everything that we do. I don't know, what do y'all think?
Yep, there's also these great lists, because people love talking about how great they are, like the Forbes list. There are a variety of institutions that publish really detailed lists, and so that's something that we also look at. And then going back to Brenna's comment about 990s, which is the tax form that all organizations use. A source like ProPublica will allow us to access that information pretty quickly. And if you ever are interested in doing deep dives on your own on what organizations are doing with their donors and funding and all of that sort of stuff, that's a really excellent resource to use. But you all are also excellent resources, because you interact with folks from companies all of the time, in maybe ways that you don't even acknowledge. So again, just kind of with that through line that we've all been talking about during this presentation, I think it's a real group effort, and just acknowledging the power that you hold as individuals in this organization to contribute to this broader kind of culture of philanthropy is a really great advantage for SBP, to have so many folks out there being able to be not only great folks singing the good news for us, but also the eyes and ears to see where other opportunities might exist that we don't know about.
Great. Thanks for the question, Edgardo. Thanks, JR. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our lunch and learn. Thank you for coming. And thanks for everything that you're doing to build a culture of philanthropy at SBP.
Development team, Elizabeth, Alexis, Brenna, awesome work. Round of applause. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great rest of your day. I will get this uploaded. You can watch it again later. or you can let people know to watch it who might have not been able to attend today. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.